Hi, I'm Hlin. I'm from Iceland. I'm a teacher, I guess. Well, I've been a teacher now for 10 years. So I'm in a break, and that's so funny. When you decide to stop something, you get invitations like this. No, let's talk about education. But yeah, so I'm a designer involved in experience design projects and curator and perhaps jack of many trades, many chapeaus, many hats. But I'll get the chance to tell you more about that. And yeah, I'm here in the couch now.
I'm Matylda. I'm the other woman on the couch. I'm very also happy that there's a lot of women in this space. I like the conversations between women, also between me and men in general. I lived in Maastricht for 10 years. That's why I'm affiliated with Hasselt. My background is design, graphic and product design, but then I did the Jan van Eyck Academy, and for 6 years I was running as an artistic director, co-founder and curator Depot Basel, which we called a place for contemporary design. But I also teach, I consult, I work as a curator, jack of all trades basically. Yeah. And I'm very happy to be here, back here.
Do you have some questions, maybe? Reverse the roles? Where do you think you are now?
That's when you started to talk about, I'm resident, I'm a student, I want to contribute. I wanted, the first thing, I wanted to know, what do you contribute to, because I know Hasselt, and for me it's fascinating. I said that to the two girls that I had an interview with, the girls from the jewelry department over there. Because I said to them, for me it's fascinating to be not here for 2 years, come back, and the amount of shoe shops in the city center and luxury boutiques, is extremely growing. Also, I think that the social, like there's even more people on the streets and eating. I have a feeling there everyone sits outside and consumes, and everything is loud, like I'm located in this very beautiful Airbnb in the city center. But the loudness until 1 a.m. and the conversations, and I think you think it's Monday evening, it's Hasselt, and it feels so vibrant in a way, But I have a feeling that this is something that people really demand. This, they want to look at nice things, and they want to engage in this kind of social contexts of having a drink outside. So I wonder, especially in the area around the station, how a location like the school, being when you come here extreme alternative in the sense of what they offer, but also what it is. Having the feeling that this is a starting point, this is almost like an underground, in comparison to how I felt in the last 24 hours being here. So I want to hear more about the school, on what the ideas and aims are, and what the vision is. And also, my first question was also, when we were sitting here, I wondered, is this publicly funded? Is it privately funded? How can this build? Sarah? Is it funded? Anything? Yeah. How can it be funded?
Well, Hlin maybe. Hlin is here.
It's trying to set up a business model, mainly depending on private, public funding, of course.
Yeah.
As it's a society developing cultural initiative. So we did many requests at Flanders, hopefully also European funds still to do. Also culture, also education. The local city is of course an important partner.
Yeah.
And also private partners, so setting up deals for materials. The fact that we can use this space for free is also a big investment from a private partner.
Yeah.
So it's a bit how it works, but it's mainly on the personal contacts we have with people who we can convince of the fact that something like the school should be here in Hasselt. This is really a consumer city, as you explained, and it's really nice to have like a organization in this beautiful,
Mm.
well-organized city, that still so many conflictuous problems, and to work on that.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yesterday we also had this example of other types of schools where also there was an example of nomads where there was a fee. So it's also important when you say how do we fund it, with a lot of human power, voluntary power, because our residents are here by because they want to, and they are investing a lot in time, and time means not having time for other projects also. So that balance will be something we will constantly work on.
But are you providing accommodation?
So we have a combination of locals, semi-locals, and then people that have their own pace or rhythm, and of course people that engage for either the 7-month full period or the 2 or 3 months.
Mm.
And for the ones that engage for coming from abroad or from another city, we indeed look for accommodation to have guest families.
Mm.
Also, it possibly started as a necessity because we didn't have funds yet,
Mm.
and we had to
But
find
is it-
alternatives.
But is it goal orientated? Because you just talked about these frames, of 3 months, 6 months, 7 months. Is it each time goal orientated?
No, I think first we had the idea to invite and select 16 to come and be 6 or 7 months here, to have a commitment. But then after having made the selection, I think we sort of said, why should we exclude the others that want to come? Because we will collaborate also with locals. So having the selection of 16 shouldn't mean to exclude others. And then we said, okay, so if we do have a commitment of the 16, let's also +1 invite the others.
Mhm.
But to say, of course you combine it with work, with projects, or you are a local and you have a family and you have a job, etc. So everyone, even this, the residents of 6-7 months, will not be 24/7 active. It's
Mhm.
combinations and finding combinations.
Mhm.
And thus it becomes very organic. So having the 7 months with a start and end, we do have people coming in. Now, for example, Rebecca is not here because she has a project in Brussels. That's how it will go. People are here, or people are doing other stuff, and also inviting us to these other stuff on a very organic way.
Mhm.
In terms of the goals or the projects that you would be working on, is that something that comes from your own stomachs, or is it something that you pick something that you really want to work on, or is it something that is a real challenge that exists in the city? It's
Also there will be a combination.
Yeah.
The residents have been asking questions already because we have been keeping this open, but behind the scenes we have been of course working on these collaborations with partners, being the city or being the province or Flanders, and then finding this balance between to keep our autonomy and to keep our creative freedom.
Yes.
For sure,
Yeah.
but then also to find possible collaboration also with these institutes or houses or departments. And the first movement was ours, meaning we would say, yes, there are problems in our city. And Hasselt is a city that possibly will not say there are problems because of its cultural and history, sort of being a very
I think no city wants to underline issue. No.
I don't know. We were talking about Liège before. I don't know. Liège co-organized the festival possibly more than it was organized here from the city. They are welcoming us in a way, but we are also saying things they don't necessarily like. And that is part of the thing, but we took the initiative to say, okay, we want to work on various things, not on just cultural things.
But can you maybe name 3 examples of projects so we both can understand more what the direction of the school is?
It's very diverse. first of all,
Sure.
because we want to communicate and to collaborate with people in general, citizens of the city. So this means that, for example, the city has a history in having recent history in having graphic art in the city, but in maybe possibly in a very passive way. So there are empty walls, and there is a graphic artist invited to come. So a possible project is to activate spaces. First of all, we have to see, we were talking about mapping possible spaces, but then to have also a combination with people that they can use the spaces, and indeed find graphic artists possibly, or other artists to activate the creativity. This is a very concrete project that through a dialogue has been sort of forming, and the word that comes out of this is very meta or very open. This means the word chosen is sort of something like urban playgrounds, full stop, period. And with the city we agree, good, we will have a project working on urban playgrounds, period. Then comes a coordinator developing this theme and seeing, okay, what are the necessities, or what are, not just with the government, but also with the people, you know, what people are we activating. And then looking back at the designers and seeing, okay, is this a call, is this a challenge, how will we start this? We don't know how to end, because there is creative freedom. And when will we end this? Because there is the idea of having monthly outings, monthly publications of these.
But just to understand the structure again, but you don't have to be how do you call it, a member?
No.
No, a student. No, what?
Well, we're vague on
Okay.
because we are the school.
Yeah.
So I don't mind being calling myself a student of the school, because I'm here to learn. But you know, we have been talking about these roles, but no, it's including. So we are open towards, because we need, of course, collaborators.
Yeah.
We need
So as one of his product design students, when they want a project, they can come in and they say, but then they come to you.
They come to one person linked to the school, and they start talking, and they have.
So maybe it's fellows.
Sorry.
The
Maybe
fellows.
fellows.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you're all, you know, we're all the same here. We're fellows. We're here to help and collaborate. And
it's a nice definition. And
Yeah.
It's a nice attitude.
Yeah.
students, yeah.
I think the
But-
school reacts on many things that are possibly wrong or grown this way in our system here. And first of all, I think a teacher saying, "Ooh, coming back from school and saying, oh, I learned a lot today," doesn't happen. Doesn't happen a lot, and that's something. That's something where I go to school, I learn from my students. You know, being able to say this is positioning yourself in a humble way, and that contrasts to the former triangle. Or
But it's then interesting that you're taking the wording the school, saying, when you say that the school is actually a place where you actually don't learn so much, and then you use the reverse of it.
well, we learn constantly. So if I'm sitting at home with my parents, I'm in a school to me, because I'm learning and they learn from us, and this role shifts because I'm growing older and my parents and that the relationships changes, and that's interesting, because that's to me the parallel to school, where the things shift from teacher and student constantly, and by naming it the school we have this discussion. That's to start.
Okay, can I ask another question?
To someone.
Maybe to someone else, okay. Who is directly involved in the team of the school? Can everyone put their arm up?
Directing?
Like in the founding team of the school.
The director is
I know that you, I think Pablo is a coach, right?
Yeah, we're Lisbeth,
Hlin.
Hlin and Kim,
Okay.
who sort of started the dialogue.
Okay, no, I just wanted to understand.
Yeah. So we started the dialogue, and then we invited Pablo, and Cavo is on a break, I think.
Yeah. When did you start?
the conversation started end of November. By the launch of the book, We Are Wonderful.
Yes. Everything comes together. Okay, have you ever thought about long-term goals, perspectives?
We have thought about it, but we don't know yet what it will be. I don't know.
I just know from all the projects I've ever done in my whole life, if you don't know where you're going to, it becomes vague, you know? It's just that, of course, a project can always change, you know? You will shift, you will redefine. Maybe the group, the system, someone goes, someone comes in, you maybe paint the walls red because you decided it's symbolic, I have no idea, you know? But but in terms of working in a team that's especially so dynamic and so fluid, it's really defined. One thing that's really hard to grasp yet, something that brings you always in this conversation when you debate of what the goal of the school is, where you think about, okay, but this is still the goal. Whatever we do next to it, we still want to reach that, whatever, you know.
What do you think the goal is?
Goal is, I mean, it's quite heavy, but one project that you're aiming for to conduct, let's put it like that.
Mission.
But I think it's
Say it again?
Mission.
A mission, yeah.
Yeah, I think that main ambition, it's gonna happen. It's gonna be like a kind of combination or articulation of the different ambitions.
Mm.
So I think it is goal oriented in the sense that goals are gonna be set, but it's not goal oriented in the sense that there is not a goal yet. so I mean, it's a discussion we've been having since yesterday, and about, of course, like structure, no structure. I mean, the discussion is not if yes or not, but it's how.
Mm.
And I think, you know, we're gonna start setting goals according to like a negotiation of different kind of expectations, of different kind of personal goals. But for instance, like you asked me, and that's where we start speaking like each own position, each own person. Like my ambition is more on a meta level, how to make a system as a school, a school as a kind of learning environment that could be a production space, it could be a studio, it could be whatever. How to make that work and make it also autonomous, not in the sense of that it's kind of isolated from the rest of the world, but autonomous in the sense that it self-governs and self-organizes itself.
Mm.
So I think ideally there is a lot of different goals and a lot of different expectations, and the idea, at least in my own perspective, the ambition is try to articulate and negotiate all those different ambitions and goals to be able to work towards different projects.
Yeah, of course.
Can I ask you something?
No.
Yeah, so far as I know, or as I understood from the school, and the reason also why I apply actually, it's this World Festival that to me meant so much because it's a temporary environment for learning and acquiring students, and it's our festival. And of course, I was interested to understand how can be co-created a festival, for instance. And I think this is a goal. No, it's not a goal.
I think we have, like Pablo said, we have a zillion of goals. Even I have I don't know, I can speak endless because I have so many reactions and goals.
But she was
And
pointing
then
out
that is only from my perspective.
Yeah, but she was pointing out something that for me is also very important, especially when you working with super flexible and permeable team and work environment. So like short-term goal and long-term goal in terms also of value, this, like what you want to offer like to Hasselt. And I'm asking because actually we just come here 2 days ago. We don't know so much about it yet, you know. So it's really an open discussion. But I thought that like festival itself, it's a goal.
There is
It's a goal
a structure.
for the city. It's a goal for the school. Like
Absolutely.
I mean, technically, there was already an open house, you know, 2 days ago, I think, the open house was officially.
Yeah,
But I mean, the goal would be that you decide in 4 months you want to do it again, and then you want to have full house, you know, that you generate so much public with a, I don't know, poster exhibition outside in the city, that people who actually look at the expensive shoes pass by and think, this is interesting. That's actually what I would rather do than going in there and consume, you know. I want to contribute. And then they would come in and in a way contribute. So maybe, I don't know, but then you know that you do it in 4 months, you know. And this is just a personal thing, and I think you're very similar in that way. When I work, I like the meta level. I'd like knowing not where I go, because then you get this serendipity, you know, not knowing what goes out of there, and then the magic happens, you know, where you bring people together and you let people speak and give them a voice. But in that moment when you have at least one thing, you will still have the same conversation, and then it's okay if you have separate conversations in the same time. So that's what I always, on a project management level, think it's very healthy to do.
I think the meta level, which interests everyone, is a thing. It's a part of it. It belongs to the process.
Yeah.
It's not a goal.
Exactly.
You have a very interesting thing going on here. A very organic, almost. I don't want to say an animal, but you know, it's very organic.
But you said it.
Perhaps it is an animal, but you know, you have this framework, and you are proposing that it's design-led, or that design at least informs perhaps the process, as I've understood it. But still, you have many disciplines and the people with you know, different backgrounds and experiences and cultures. You know, coming back to that, and many different languages. We speak different types of English, even. You know, because we have the word mean different things for us. So I think it's super exciting, you know, process you have ahead of you, and to me it's it also mirrors what I've and you touched upon it a little bit earlier. This frustration that we want change. We do want to change the world. We want to make the world a better place. I think that's why. Perhaps that's something we all have in common. We do want to make the world a better place. I'm just claiming we do.
Very idealistic.
You know, very idealistic. But I do think that's something that perhaps we could relate to, and that when we talk about design, and it's very without, you know, trying to define too much. But for me, design is always about change, and I think now. We live in a world that is changing a lot, but at the same time, things are not changing. You know, we have like, you know, disruptive, you know, economies. We have Airbnb, we have Uber, we have technologies. We can do almost, you know, anything. Yet none of this high tech and none of these sort of futuristic things are really happening or taking off. And we're also seeing gaps in societies. We're leaving the old ones, the elderly, out of the picture. We are discarding. I mean, we have neighborhoods within the cities where people are just where people live in bad conditions. But at the same time, we have a lot of shoe shops. You know, like, you know, in the same city, we have so many levels everywhere, and that the gap between the rich and poor is increasing and everything. So I think we can tap into almost any structure that we have. Is it healthcare, education, you know, politics, demographies? You know, the very idea of democracy. But at the same time, I feel that design has power and potential to do things. And the creative, I speak about design as.
I didn't think it was only about design. I never read the word design.
No, I don't think it's. I don't think exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Exactly, but
I also don't want to talk about it.
No, I was gonna. Exactly.
Yeah.
People are going to change the world, but there are still. I think that there's something about creativity. And perhaps some of the methods and tools of design are sort of applied creativity. They can come in handy in all sorts of contexts. But I think there's a certain. I think what you're dealing with here, and perhaps mirroring a bit this this frustration that things are not changing as fast as we would like them to do, or we are not. We would like to be empowered. We would like to empower others to be, this old saying, be the change you want to see in the world. But it's I at least can sense around me and in a lot of disciplines and areas that people are frustrated with being stuck. This is sort of a status quo. So and I think if the creative industries are not having a seat at the table in the government, at the mayor's office, in the public servant system, if we leave out creativity, of course, in every single human being, we are all creative, but we've kind of systematically left it out in many educational programs, and resulting in the fact that we as humans tend to use more of the sort of theoretical thinking and analytical. So I think we're missing out too much. We're missing out too much if we leave out the creative side.
But I want to add to this discussion about design. I think we have to withdraw from design because we are becoming exclusive. The problem is when we start to speak about social problems and always connect it with design, we're leaving everyone else out. Everyone who's not a designer or is in the dialogue within the context of design.
Yeah.
What the issues are always are topics,
Yes.
What is the definition of home? Where do I belong to,
No,
how does the health system work? How does economics work? All these things are related. They already are simple containers that belong to the world.
Exactly.
When we start talking about design as a tool or designers being activists, I find it really problematic because we withdraw. It becomes a clique, and that's. And I skipped through the website. I don't even think that the school has manifested itself with a specialty on design, or am I wrong? I felt more.
I think we chose design as our language, we meaning as a starting point, because of its dedicated role we could play and where we could communicate with people. Meaning we want to involve people, or we want to have that seat on the table and to be able to communicate through the language of design. We started to think we could mean something and change something indeed from that position of designer. And that is indeed isolating our position sort of, or claiming or determining our position, but also expanding that position. And at the moment I think that position or that space of a designer or that role is tiny and is at the end of a chain. And or is excluded even. So if we say we want to call it design, are we excluding? But actually we are being excluded as designer. So it's also expanding that area where the seat on the table at the mayor is broadened and made larger and larger to be able to have impact.
Yeah, because I think I totally agree. Maybe I didn't express myself, clearly, but because I do think that it evolves around the people involved and the collaborations, and whether it's transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary, multi or whatever. But it's about having as many different voices as you can in the same room at the same time, and I do think that there is a value of emphasizing creativity because we have just been neglecting it too much. And I currently I do a lot of consultancy work within healthcare, and work a lot with physicians and nurses, and then I jumped from that over to working with the city of Reykjavi, and talking, and I use the methods of, I use my sort of toolbox, which are the methods of the designer who wants to co-create with whomever on a challenge, that is proposed to us. You know, that's why I asked this question earlier, because I think it's very, very important to think of, you know, where is the challenge coming from? Where is the, you know, what are we dealing with? The home. What is the definition of a home? What is the kind of, what sort of expertise do we need? Do we have that around the table? You know, evaluate that. Who owns the problem? To sort of begin to understand who are the stakeholders here? Who should we be talking to? Who should be involved? How do we make this in a way that it's a process, it's a project, and then it becomes sustainable? That is something that has, you know, that has its own life. Because I have a problem with, and I think you shared that a little bit, when you come in and you structure beautiful projects that touch on very, very important topics, and then they're gone. 3 months later, the exhibition is closed, and it's gone. Of course, it can act as a catalyst in some way, or you know, it's sort of an awakening or something that, you know, touches people, so that they, you know, begin to make other choices. But so I think that's very important. And if you haven't something to keep in mind when you're starting these kind of challenges. Yes, I have a burning feeling for helping or elderly people, you know, but to back and say, okay, what does this actually mean? Now I'm in this context. Remember yesterday, Brody talking about, you know, what do I do with calligraphy in this context, on this wall, in that museum? And so I think context is super important. It's something that you will definitely, you know, learn here. You know, you come here to this place. What can I do? What do I have? What do I need?
Sure. I imagine that we are also talking and imagine about our wider context, because of course we are based in Hasselt and we are based here, but I don't imagine all the projects are involving with this specific spatial context and specific city of Hasselt. I think it's a bit more wider. The process we are trying to develop, and I also think that we are trying to put a diverse projectuality together. So having very clear mind about who is the stakeholders, we are the partners, and blah blah blah, can kind of sound as a fixed scheme that maybe that can work. We know that can work, but it's also a little bit comfort space that I personally would like to break down. You know? So I hope there will be occasion, and 6 months is not little time, to create something more organical in the way it can be developed. You know, like, and I don't know, that's my expectation. But, of course, there's a lot of personal experience, a lot of personal luggage bringing to Hasselt, but I think it's more interesting for me, at least, open discussion about co-creation and cross-discipline tools. You know, like that can really go behind the idea that what is design, what has to be done by design, what is hard, what has to be done by art. You know, like imagine like a kind of cross cultural tools.
Frederica, can I ask you, in your ideal world, tell me 5 groups of people. Did you 5 groups of people? Did you imagine they would walk into the school? Did you find really relevant for the school that are not designers but come from the city? Did you know, name 5 groups?
Sure, musician. So musician, visual artist, digital artist, definitely. Young people, teenager, families.
It's interesting because I expected you to say something like the elderly, you know, the business. I don't know the companies here in Hasselt, you know, but company X, because you want to provide them or show them what you're doing here, you know, how relevant. I didn't, because the 5 groups that you just named are very close to you, you know. It's It's the people who work in the creative field. They will completely understand what you're doing here. But you want to. I thought that you want to address the people who don't, who are not part naturally of the school. Or am I wrong?
Well, I'm thinking about a kind of user. I kind of think about people that can co-create with us content.
Mm.
You know, and that's where they are active partner,
Mm.
and they are not the financial group that will say, "Ah, you are doing a great job with your money." This is something that I can imagine because it's.
No, I thought want to influence.
I think that was for sure our goal, or is our goal.
Yeah.
I think, and that becomes then interesting because in our process we have different chapeaux,
Yeah.
and in the role of collaborators, of course, we want people that partially speak the same language or speak the same culture,
Mm.
sort of click to our culture, but then we want to have the police department here as
Yeah.
a sort of to be influenced department, because they have the least or the never been involved with creativity possibly, or the service that makes the actual road here in the neighborhood that influences how we walk on it.
Mm.
It can also be a platform, it can be many things, but one way, exactly, it's like or let's say me, working with police and kindergarten kids, I don't know, to figure out, what's the best way to do policing in the streets. I don't know. It can be. I think involvement. You probably want. To co-create, to collaborate, to involve, to engage. A larger audience. So that's all very exciting. And I think when you propose, also you do this by doing real projects, right? You're gonna learn through doing projects. That's a very empowering and powerful way, because in that way you can leave the world of definitions.
Mm.
Why don't
Yeah.
I don't know. What I'm expecting, it's an archetypal symbol. The school is a school. The school is a place which is in the society, but
Outside of a society.
outside
Mhm.
the society. It's still a space where you have the time and the space to create and to experiment and to discuss and which is less and less in in ordinary schools, but in a special school you still have to do it. And why don't you invite external people from the local situation in the school? Because the school is a special space, and I think without the idea of keeping this space and increasing the quality of this space and creating a kind of the school as an example for other schools, I think it's an enormous goal and a wonderful one. So instead of going out, because going out it's difficult, it's already difficult for professional designers. We are students here. We are still learning from each other. Why don't we invite, but really programmatically, people from the outside, from the street, from the police, from the showroom and whatever, and invite them and be with you in the school.
And very.
The
Sorry.
best example is possibly the kids from around the neighborhood of Halte 24. So earlier than the school, Halte has been involved in the Traders Open School, where by collaborating and by inviting them in the house, and by having them have a role and also guard their role, because they are specialists in certain technique, craftsmanship, etc. There's a perfect example of what the school possibly can be. Inviting people that are there. The Halte 24 is a small empty shop, let's say, where the kids age 14-ish until 20-ish dropping out of school or not feeling like going to school or hanging around near the station like they do, but having them own a sort of space or a moment after school, and having to start the dialogue, the conversation, or just to play or to hang out, but still with a sustainable backing up from people knowing how to activate the positivity in these people. And this is something on the surface only, because the other thing, which is the meta word, for example, of the project, is absence at school. Absence at school, age 16 to 18, in a certain technical or professional school. And this is something like the city would call a problem, And then the school comes in and starts talking or clicking onto an organization which already exists, and then along with possible didactic research group, we start looking at the school, entering their school, and having the school entering our school, and then seeing how we can slowly develop something, collaborating with our own people, towards a finishing moment as a festival.
But I have to underline what Giovanna said, and one key word that she said I think is really important is inviting. I actually think if a school should work, you have to define maybe 2 or 3 ambassadors, call them ambassadors, or whatever, that really go out and go to these companies and make a short presentation or bring a leaflet and say, hey guys, police officers, we're doing this. Maybe organize a police dinner. I have no idea, And because it has to be entertaining in a way, engaging, they have to understand that it's something that they thrive from, But it has to work hand in hand in a way, I believe.
I think
I have a kind of conflict with we're speaking like if we were not here. We're speaking like of how something could be that is not here. When we're here in a space that already exists, we're in the back. I mean, we're speaking about a place that exists, a space that exists that might be turned into a space. I'm not going to deep into that, but we're in the back and in the top of a Tajine restaurant that has a person behind it. We're around the corner from a youth house, Halt 20. We're next door to a fry shop. So I think that is already like a thing that is doing things already. I mean, I don't want to sound redundant, but that is affecting already the city. I think the goal is to see how, of course, throughout time we can articulate all these different skills or these different expectations and desires to perhaps direct more that change, as you were saying. As much as I can disagree with some ideas of like framing a design or not, we can perhaps agree that it has something to do with change or transformation and being able more on control of what can we do and not letting like the big shops take control of the city, but also perhaps direct some of the change and doing some articulation. So I would start by the fact that there is already a space here that is already in the city, is like a body in the city, and there is already some bodies here. So that's already changing the city. Then of course I think it's very challenging what comes to do those articulations. But yeah, I think all those are great ideas.
But I didn't have the feeling that we never speak about it not existing. We do acknowledge, all of us.
No, but we speak. We seem to be speaking about like what the school could be like. Like there was no we were not here in the space. And I'm not saying that use certain word or anything like that. But it seems like talking about like, oh, what could we do about something that is already here in a very kind of physical sense.
Oh no, I felt more that from the expertise of all of us that there's a level of exchange, because I mean, like specifically with Three Ladies, for example, we conducted a lot of projects in the context on different levels. And I mean, I work more in the cultural field, but I've also worked with a lot of commercial companies, and I also understand how you have to, when you want to make something long lasting, and I do think that you want to make the school sustainable, like defining services, for example, it's for a lot of people in the cultural world a very dirty world, word. But it's very easy actually. If you have a skill and you can define that, but also present that to someone, there's a lot of companies or people, private people or bigger people who will be interested in these coaching sessions or whatever. But then you can nourish your cultural work and all your activities that you want to make completely independent with the funding that you maybe can generate on a regular basis by yourself in forms of workshops, or events or whatever, where people pay entry. You just have to figure it out how it's manageable between the amount of time you work on it and the money you generate. And if this kind of at some point gets a balance, you're sustainable. And that's more this kind of idea in combination when you say you want to attract a specific target group that you maybe are not. Normally you don't have so much access to. It's going there and saying, hi, I'm Pablo and I'm doing this, Or even the other market. I think the other market, it's a project that Pablo did in 2013. I think this is a really great tool because it's still the train station of Hasselt. I think a lot of people in Belgium not even take a train, I mean, it's still a car country, I believe, no? Because I arrived yesterday and I also thought on the train, it's so empty, like in Switzerland, no one drives a car, but everyone takes a train because the train system is so developed and very efficient, always on time, it's crazy. But here I really thought it's quite empty. Like I had the whole wagon, it was like me and 2 people. It was great, Love taking an empty train, but it's just about how to think about how you can bring your ideas and your perspectives and influence the people, but you have to be proactive about it. That's all.
I anyway agree with you about this place because when I come to this, I go in Hasselt and I just pop up here. I was like, wow.
Isn't it nice? Yeah.
Super nice.
It's like Berlin, no?
Yeah, like a kind of Berlin feeling.
Yeah.
Self-made place, super alive, and so on. And then I got to the city of Hasselt, like the center, straight on there.
And you want to leave?
Did you go on Sunday or did you go on what day?
Yeah, it was Sunday, so
Oh, wow.
It's like, Judge Munchen when there's the beer festival. Okay, it's complicated then, but coming back to you, I think this place has a kind of convergence energy, that brings here people that can touch each other, can share some kind of value and so on. But what I expecting that we develop a divergent flow of energy, that from here we can spread around neighbor, the city, or maybe also a different city. Like, is this change of energy, or is change of energy that I supposed to expect about our contribution?
Absolutely. I see in a similar way, but that's why my comment was not meant as a kind of critique to what you were saying. It was just like a call to start from the fact, or at least in my perspective, I like to see it that we start from the fact that we're here, like bodily, like with other senses. We're here in a physical space that has also already kind of articulations. It is in a certain space, in a strange city in many ways, and then from that point is that we can start making these different kind of articulations to the different kind of organizations in the city, to different kind of cities, to different kind of challenges, and that's of course the challenge, and
but is it the idea to expand it to other cities?
No, but I don't know, but I think, yeah.
Someone wants to.
Perhaps it will happen in other cities after, and it will be a different kind of articulation, but at least in these 6 months, it can already be like a semi-regional articulation, and of course each of the residents and all the participants are coming with a package, so how to articulate all that. So
I would like to put a question. Maybe more naive, but when I came here, I was expecting to come to a school. Is it still a school, or is it a project aiming at?
Yes, it is a school.
Doing something in the city for an inclusive. I don't know.
The school is just a building.
Yeah, for me it was okay. And then, by the way, with this call for projects, for me it was interesting to include the school in the reciprocity, the new object, the new education object. But with what? For me, the most interesting question today is about how we are learning, how we are teaching, who's the teacher, who's the, I mean, it's on education, it's on the importance of education as as a experimental place.
I
And
think
we have to put all the efforts to defend this space.
I think one of the reactions of this belief I had was when I realized that education, or the institutes or the players of education, were not having their seat on the table in many discussions where the future of a province, of a city, of a country is being determined. So that's important, that we create our position and that we expand our position. Everywhere where we see that education, culture and creativity has an important role in society, that it is effective towards the future, and that it is positive towards the future, meaning positive not in terms of money or a success, etc., but that it activates, and that is the social role of design, that it activates as many as possible in a society. And in that sense, we are a school, because in that role, we activated our position at the in the office of the mayor, in the office of the governor, in the office of the minister.
Yeah.
And then, yes, we want to. Our first presentation was done in Girona, and the idea is to have the school be a method, a movement that possibly from the basics on can be implemented or used, because the school is also in one of our meetings, our partner Johan Ardui from UCLL said actually school, the elementary thing of school is that has been made public and it has been made free back at Plato's time, where school or education or knowledge was private and business and money related, and they said, okay, no, let's react and make it public and let's make it free, which was dangerous. But having this idea and reflecting it on our own schools, I teach at Basel Med, and then we have Hlin teaches at Luca, where we see them, where they see themselves as competitors and not sharing knowledge or sharing their path and sharing and being open to each other. So then we say, okay, let's be a school even more, where we can say we want to do it differently. We want to be an excuse for them to be different. And there comes our reason. I think a festival, a school or a project is needed as an external independent movement or organization for the institutionalized to have this excuse to be different. Because on their own, it's really hard to change things. And we see collaborations happen due to excuses.
Okay.
Sorry?
I didn't know before.
With who?
What? Sorry?
I wanted to know before if we had to collaborate with police. I'm sorry.
With who?
With who?
The police.
Police.
Police is our semi-friend. We have a different relationship with police because we are in an area challenged, in the station area, and they do raids, raids in our neighbors, and this place hasn't been raided, but we're still sitting at the table with the police talking about the station area, where we're saying, what do we need more? And they say more cameras, more You know, you can't put that wall because we don't know what's happening behind the wall. What are these kids doing there with a skateboard on the ramp there, which is called the Office Justice Palace? And that role of a school, of a creative partner, of designers is super important to make a change. And that change is, let's say, I wouldn't call it higher level, but still the hierarchy of schools, of cities, of governments is, maybe my car is parked. I don't know.
It wasn't me.
Hey.
Is he taking off his clothes?
Neighborhood? Hey, welcome. Hey. Okay, okay.
We were
You
talking
can-
about the police. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
probably you felt it.
My nose was itching.
Bye-bye.
I think
He knew that we were talking about him.
was this a radio?
Yeah, it smells bit.
It's a Belgian type of radio. I think that you said something that, well, you said a lot of interesting words and things, but I think having an excuse is wonderful. So, you know, to have a place, a space where you can experiment, you have an excuse to go and knock on people's doors and invite them to dance. Because that's how I think collaborations are very much, it's for me, I think of it as a dance. And if you have a lot of people and a lot of disciplines, it's like, you know, choreography somehow. And it takes two to tango. You were saying it before, you know, there has to be some sort of, there's something in it for me. And I have to, I think if you wanna get into social projects, and I know you have been doing a lot of these also, it's like you have to sort of, you know, social design projects and living, right? Yeah. So, you know, you have to somehow cultivate this perhaps quality, you know, in yourself to invite people into your world and sort of make things intriguing and exciting and sexy. I don't know, you know, somehow find that there's a way of, you know, there's something in it for me, there's something in it for the other person, because we need each other, we need to do this, you know, together. We're not.
Is it open 24/7?
Yeah, that's what to say.
Like 24/7 open?
Here.
We don't know yet.
No, it's the aim. How it's practically done, I don't know yet.
Oh, yeah.
The residents should have access 24/7.
Okay. I've mentioned this, a lot of people who know me, I've mentioned this book many times. It's my favorite book. It's called The So-Called Utopia of the Centre Bourg. It's a publication that was written in the 60s by, it seems to be a fictional character, but obviously it was an Italian writer who wrote this book. But he used I think he's calling him Albert Meister in the publication as writer. But the publication is about the time shortly before the Centre Pompidou is built, you know, and back then in the 60s or 70s, it was the cultural palace, you know. It was the most important thing that Europe in the 20th century kind of developed, you know, epicenter, so-called, you know, where everything comes together. There's this huge place where there's a library and an exhibition space, a cinema open to the public, and culture will be produced, obviously governmentally funded or privately funded. But the publication is not very much about the Centre Pompidou, it's about the underground. Because the publication, and when we started to talk, I very strongly had this diagram that is in this publication in my mind, because it's a dissect, you know, of the building, and then you see the obviously the earth, not the earth like the floor, not the floor, but the ground, and then underneath you see almost like the mirror of this building underneath, but obviously not visible to the rest of the world, But the fascinating thing about this publication is that you start reading it, and it's really about, the narrator really speaks about, okay, so we're building this Centre Pompidou. Underneath, it's the so-called utopia of the Centre Beaubourg. And they really start to have, it's empty spaces, like 16 floors, or I believe in this book are. And then they really start asking themselves really pragmatic questions. Do we need chairs? How much budget does chairs cost actually in an institution? Can be millions, calculated. Some museums you go in, there's a design chair that costs 300 euros, multiply it by, 600, because you need so much spaces, boom, the budget is gone, But the nice thing about this publication is they really start from what infrastructure do they need to exist and to work long term? How do groups come together? How does the communication between all of them happens? Who's the janitor? Who's going to clean up? Because very pragmatic. Who's just taking care of the money? They didn't have so much money, but they had some. How can we make more money later? So what I'm just saying is, this publication is really interesting because it really shows how an alternative society within a society can work. And how actually Pontus Hilton back then, who was the director of the museum, obviously it's a fictional book, but was claiming that he prefers to be in the Centre Pompidou, in Centre Beaubourg, in the so-called Centre Beaubourg, than in the actual institution. But they are really talking also about the groups that kind of come together. Suddenly the guys, like bosses from companies that heard about it, who actually always wanted to be affiliated with the arts, quit their jobs and banks, because suddenly they had the alternative space where they could evolve and have their own studio and produce work, And also they had exhibitions, so they had to also organize themselves, So what I'm just saying is, read this book, because it's extremely interesting to read from a perspective from outside, how this kind of organizations and systems already in the 60s, 70s, on a fictional basis, obviously, what do they need? Because they really talk about all these relevant aspects. Also about, I remember one whole level was like this hippie groups where suddenly they decided they're going to have children together. I'm not saying that this is going to happen here, but I'm just saying that at the end everything is possible. But the book just very nicely projects this kind of idea of this alternative society systems. And
There's a real project that I think it's interesting in terms of institution and system, and it's the Palais de Tokyo.
yeah.
For instance, it's this museum that during the 90s was under the artistic direction of Nicolas Bourreau, which
Yeah.
is the one who theorized relational art.
He had a second one who was the financial guy,
Yeah.
And I saw a talk with both of them. You understand why this worked. It's not Nicolas who pulled this off. He put the artistic work in it, but you needed this complete two opposites. Yeah.
I think he just framed out
Yeah.
something that was happening
Mm.
in the period, and I think it's interesting that he was pointed out this kind of phenomenon in the artwork. But
Yeah.
in terms of institution and museum, I think it was very inspiring, at least for me, even not going too deep in how they manage, but to see that an institution and a physical place, like a museum that has a precise role in society to maintain art, to keep art, and to preserve art, was completely subject of discussion and in terms of aesthetics, in terms of function, in terms of cultural offer. So it was really blow minding in
Mm.
a way what happened there.
Yeah.
Hlin, can I ask you, why do you think we are here 90% of women, and the school has received change-making female designers or creatives?
You're asking me.
Yeah.
It's our time, man. It's our time, not a
Yeah,
question.
exactly. Yeah. Do you listen to rap music?
I actually want you to answer this first.
No, you see, have you listened to all the new rappers coming up nowadays? They're mostly women. The most, the ones that are, that are coming in now. No, but yes, I think in some ways it is our turn. But I think women, and I'm going to generalize, but I think we're better with complexity, change, and uncertainty, and households. No,
I'm gonna slap you for the last comment.
I know. No, what I mean by it is that because I suck at it, that's why I say this. I think there's something in the female energy, power, way of thinking, intuition that works now and that is needed now. And I think creativity, intuition, and female power and energy is a delicate, blend that is very needed now. And when I say we're good at the household, I mean we're good at doing a lot of things at the same time and sort of keeping things together. Because the level you were talking about, we mentioned it many times. To make things happen, you also need to be rational about things. It's not that we're all just gonna fly.
I totally disagree. Not totally, but I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
What I think personally is really we're waking up, but also we are getting the opportunity to be waking up. Because when you look historically, we weren't given the same opportunities as men would have. Which is generally to a lot of structures from how the school systems or work systems will work, employment, all these things, like name it. But at the end, at the moment we're on a kind of almost equal level, there's still things like children, for example, that are obviously goddess or whatever, like obviously a great gift to humankind, but that takes us out. Yeah. And makes us unequal in a way, but in a way in terms of skills, I think all women can have the same skills as men, all of us. But the thing is that we have much more access to things, so we can act in many ways because everything is in front of us. Yeah. So that's our time now. So that's why I think it's very natural that now a lot of women are very much interested in this kind of engagement because you can feel it, I mean, this morning I opened Facebook, the hashtag #MeToo comments on Facebook that just clarifies that a lot of women want to be solidary, thank you very much, with each other to show that they have been harassed or they have been abused in a way, I mean, I haven't reacted on it personally because I'm a very privileged white woman, not terms on a financial level, but more that I've generated a certain power from my family and acknowledgement from my upbringing, that I've never been afraid to do anything else, like anything that no one else could do, so I've been in power positions where I also abuse my power with a man and with a woman, where I maybe mistreated sometimes people in a way. Not total. Let's put it down to harassment. Harassment. But what I'm saying is that there's still a lot of women that I know that are in a situation where they haven't obtained this power or being aware of the space that they can claim. And I think at the moment 2017 is for me very symbolically for the fact that we learn how to claim the space, and that's what we're doing.
I think it's both.
Yes, of course.
I think it's super happy that it's all time, but I think it's not just this is already a romanticized version of why more women are going into this cultural studies or cultural field. I think there is a really to the ground reason for that, and every time I was making projects together, in fact the women were the first ones coming and being able to engage because they have free time somehow, or they are more willing to go into a system where they don't earn money but they earn something else and they are not paid for that and so on, and that was completely okay for women, and for men it's less. So in architecture it's also a bit more tricky because architects men have this vision of being the boss still, and that was really clear with the students, and something that is that the income is not necessarily money related.
Mm.
From my experience in Belgium,
I
that
think
was really
also
strong.
a lot has to do not with women and men, but what has been addressed through the centuries to be female and feminine as a problem. Then now it's time, thanks God, to deal with certain aspect of society that has been to address to women like weakness, fragility. Was
Yeah.
Giovanna before? Everything has been addressed to the feminine world. It's time to change the vision about that. It's not about the women are taking over. It's about the feminine energy, which is also a lot more sustainable and a lot more global in the sense of looking at the planets and be a ecological feminine.
I think it's both in combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so
But
too.
Mm.
this is also something as a feminist, as a woman of the 21st century that I'm asking myself. It's not about women, it's about access, definitely. It's also about what is being addressed to feminine and to women since now.
Yeah.
What do you actually do in Iceland, Hlin?
What do I actually do?
Yeah.
What?
Actually, yeah. Hang on.
Wait, can I go back to that
So-
woman question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really important. How can you skip it like
We're
that?
having a silent
What do you do?
No, because I think it's very. I'm sorry for taking the word on this.
No, I think it's great. We want to hear it.
No, because I think it's really. I mean, I think it's representative also of something bigger, and I quite agree with what Federica was saying. Is that is trying to also bring forward something that has been hidden, and that I think is kind of in the ethos of almost like everything that we have been discussing during the school is trying to try a different kind of model of education. Also, perhaps put kind of in the foreground something that has been in the background. And I think this has to do a lot with feminist activism or a lot of, I mean, from affirmative action that is also trying to generate some conditions to put women up front. I think this has attracted, I mean, thankfully as well, a lot of women. But I think it's also representative of perhaps people in subaltern conditions. Like feminism now it has become also a kind of umbrella to gather other kind of subaltern conditions. Of perhaps being black or being illegal immigrant and so on. So I think it's a bit the ethos of the whole project around is to try to give this kind of different kind of voice and approach. So I think that might have attracted women, and I think I don't want to get into differentiations of what makes a feminine aspect or not, because I mean I think that should be a discussion that if I can participate, I don't want to give a too hard of a position.
But also think that the majority of women here is very in line with what I've been seeing in the programs where I've been teaching over the past almost 10 years. Those have been I was for 5 years I was based in Konstfack in Stockholm, which is the arts academy there. I was teaching in a Master of Experience Design, which started very much as dealing with intangible things, experiences. How do you cater for certain types of experiences within the man-made environment, and then slowly migrated, because it was a new program when I started teaching there, so slowly migrated towards more systemic changes, service design even, went through a lot of experiments with interactive design and so on, and then slowly towards social challenges. So each year we had 9 students or so, and usually we had 2 or 3 men. So this was, and throughout all the years we had a large majority of women applying for this program, whereas you would have an interior IT. What's that? No, it's not interior, but it's product design, where you would have the other. It would be the other way around, and so I'm very firm in that. In my opinion, that I think that dealing with these, wanting to become to activate change or create change in society, is something that somehow speaks more to, and dealing with intangibles and working with experiences and so on, is something that speaks to us more than or female, feminine. But and then I've been teaching in Iceland in a master in design, which is also dealing with societal challenges. It's an interdisciplinary. It's called Master in Design, but it's an interdisciplinary master. So we have a group of people, 16 people or so, that come from sociology, psychology, geography, architecture, design, fine arts, and they all come together and sort of, okay, here's where we want to learn the skills, how to tackle societal challenges, and it's in one way it's comparable to what you're doing here. Is that it's situated in Reykjavi, so we're like, okay, we are in Reykjavi, Iceland, and we're gonna look at things here, and then we're gonna see what sort of possible impact could this have in the world. So sort of being very rational about where we are, or sort of having a really strong focus, learning through that process and project to then being able to expand into the world. And in this, and again, it's filled with women. And I think it's an interesting question, and I think this is true. It's both axes, and we're being there's openness in society for this, but it's also the white, the old Yale, stale, male, pale. We can call him whatever. He realized that it's getting cold on the throne, and governments need to be more democratic, more open. We're seeking new ways, and so I think when you're saying female energy, or these qualities, I'd rather say qualities, because man can possess these qualities as well. It's this quality of understanding, of empathy, of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, but I agree with Pablo. I think that's the direction maybe that you were going to. I hope that maybe 5 years, it's a little bit very optimistic. 10 probably too, but maybe in 20 years, when my children, I have no children yet, have a certain age, that we will stop speaking about, the other day I said to a friend, I said I did something. Okay, I tell you actually, can I tell an anecdote? I have to tell, okay. I went to a talk about Memphis, Vitra Design Museum, Memphis, about Ettore Sotzas. I have to tell a story. Aldo Sibic, who used to be involved at Memphis, was giving the talk. I love the Italians when they present. I love it. They have charming, they are vibrant, they have a very nice way of conversing and also addressing the people in the audience. It was a good conversation, good talk in the beginning. He spoke up a little bit about Ettore, and boom, he flipped over just to talk about his own work, where I just thought, I came to an exhibition opening about Sotzas. Why do you talk about your work that you do in 2017? I'm not interested in that, which also was very mediocre in my point of view. But what he did is he mentioned all of the guys, everyone, multiple times. He hasn't mentioned Martine Bedin, Nathalie Dupasquier, or Joanna Gravona, nothing, not at all. And I was sitting there in the first row on the ground because I came 5 minutes too late, thinking, okay, I will be the first one to ask a question. The moment comes, and unfortunately, the curator that curated the show hadn't even prepared one question at the end. So this was an awkward moment. Things like, okay, thank you very much. Anyone a question? I raise my arm, and I say, Aldo, thank you very much for your very charming presentation. I really enjoyed it, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit on why you haven't mentioned any of the women who were like involved at the Memphis? All this reaction, charming as ever. No, Matylda. No, he didn't know me, but I introduced myself later. No, don't tell anyone I haven't mentioned the women. Of course they were there. They were the girlfriends of them. And I was just sitting there, and I was just really thinking. And the interesting thing is, it was not embarrassing for him, for me. It was embarrassing for him to say that, because all the women in the audience were speechless. You think anyone asked a question after that? You think we talked about anything else after that? Of course we didn't. So he just tried to explain the situation. He wasn't able to go anywhere with it, and then the talk will remain in the history of the Vitro Design Museum as the only question that was ever asked: where are the women? You know, and that's all. So later on, I went up to him and I asked him about it again. He talks about his wife even like she's this mediocre left part, you know. I think it's shocking, you know, how you can in public not acknowledge the involvement of a woman in this time frame. So yeah, that's all I wanted to mention. So what I'm saying is I hope and after that Erika Piner, who is a curator, she works with Amelie Klein at the museum, she said to me, Matylda, you have balls underneath your skirt. And you know what I said to her? Don't ever say that to me, because I'm myself, you know, because she compared me with a man in that moment, you know. And that's what I hope, that in maybe 5 to 10 years we're not going to talk, oh, you are feminine because you cry, and you have balls because you're a bit stronger, but we really acknowledge the person as she or he is, and with the capacities that she or he brings to the discourse, and not talking about what attributes we have related to specific genders.
And I think that starts by like apparently like small actions, like just bringing forward like opinions or visions that have been quieted, and that's because of course we can. I mean, I don't think it's an idea of the school to make like a long reflection about feminism, but in a way, I think.
Why not?
No, but I think it is. I think it is, and that's why I thought I get
Look at
I
him.
think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of embedded, and that's why you speak about the ethos, and I think that's what some people feel kind of affiliated to. That's, I think, kind of the ethos that is behind it,
But
is also to kind of bring this kind of non-traditional subaltern position, and eventually they will be recognized like that, but not if we start speaking from the qualities, or maybe yes, because I also don't want to kind of completely like cancel your position. I just say like.
Can I ask a question? Among all the applicants, among all the persons who applied to the school, how many were women and how many were men? Because
The average was the same in the whole, so we had 47 applicants, and I think in the whole number, majority was female, I think. So the selection wasn't, I think the selection was done by chemistry and not looking at a balance, because the conclusion of the other type of balance came after that sunny afternoon sitting outside, where we said, oh, okay, well, this is happening, sort of. Yeah, we were so concentrated on having our roles because we were sitting together. My role was, okay, I had communicated by Skype, so I knew possibly the chemistry of the need or the wish to collaborate, not the closed character. And then Pablo looked at it from a different point of view, Hlin from a different point of view. So we were very focused. Not in our selection was, and the selection was indifferent to the complete applications. No.
so a priori there was a very balanced interest between men and women towards the project of the school as well. And there was no positive action saying like that from your part. So it's a really, well, okay.
Exactly, yeah, that's...
So, well, I don't know if there is any explication, because if at the beginning we had a very more female applicants, we could make an interpretation in the social or also sociology side of the issue, which is the hidden part of the time, or maybe that social project. For me, the school is social innovation. I could put it inside of the terms social innovation, social project, social design, because today I came here to hear about social design. So I could have interpreted the issue thinking that well, women culturally are being told or are being learned to take care of the others and to make the link between humans and the earth and the resources. So it could be interested in, well, it would be an interpretation, but what I hear, which is more interesting, is that the school interests both men and women. So
Yeah.
But
In
more
a
women than men, and that's
more
what.
women than
Yeah, more women than men.
Okay.
There was much more
Okay.
women
In
applying.
general.
Let's say it could be like 85% were women, and the rest were men. So yes, there was no affirmative action. There was no positive discrimination in it. So then that's why I speak about that there was an ethos that perhaps attracted, and of course, as you say, there could be a lot of elements of from kind of a sociological perspective or from analyzing our society that would express. But it's super also nice that we didn't realize
But what do
about that. We didn't even think about it until we had the results. We're like, well, but it's great. That it's not. It was never a kind of oh, we have to keep a balance. Like, I mean, what is a balance? I mean.
But what
it's
do you think? The women that are here, that applied, that went through the process, and
what we think about
what's the
majority
reason?
women,
What's the reason? Like the original question. Why do we have so many women here?
I think it just happened.
You think it
I
just
think there's
happened?
no reason, yeah. Otherwise, it probably has kind of certain intention to like select women.
What about the open school? Is it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3? How is it, the situation?
Well, we try to have some sort of balance, try to have as many equal number. There were 15 participants, so that wasn't possible. But we tried. But it was, we were more interested in the chemistry and keeping those 1/3.
But I mean, what is the situation? How many women are, how many men?
I think there were about 6 men and 9 women.
Okay.
if I'm not wrong.
That said, I think the project, the school, was partly developed by the disbalance in this street. So there is there was a project called Bamstad in last year in the summer, and when I was asked to participate, I said, okay, these are the points I want to work on. One is well, there is no creativity in this area, so the project was introducing pop-up shops and creativity in businesses temporarily. So, but I was asked to participate from a more cultural or creative art point of view. And two, I said there is a very testosterone-driven street, so the station area as it is. So towards the city, sort of, we said from the beginning we want to disrupt the present state of the station area, which is testosterone-driven. So
And we saw him.
there. Yeah.
Also that balance, it's something that doesn't always go around with a kind of democratic approach towards things. I mean, if you, in some way, like we are questioning system of power, and in some way we are also questioning, like in a more global way, democracy itself, if it's working or not. I mean, in large scale. So I don't think that a balance between gender is something that leads to a more integrated and balanced environment. I think that the balance between skills and individual can lead towards this.
I think the goal is actually to be that it's considered to be normal. You know, I mean, the thing is that I think it's nice to make jokes, you know, about the guy that comes in and these cliches. But the thing is, this is a form of harassment. You know, that is so in our nature to make jokes. You know, like, you know, I also the guy came in and I made the joke that is he gonna take off his clothes in a minute?
Yeah, because I mean, what's the point? Where we're gonna lead this discussion? Why we are so? You're asking why you are in lesbian? We don't know.
Yeah, but the term that Pablo used many times, affirmative action, which is a form of positive discrimination, that's a problem. You know, when you try to favor women to balance something out, or also lately, because I was involved in a lot of discussions in terms of being employed as a professor, and it's interesting that 2 positions in Germany were offered to me because I'm a woman, you know, specifically from them. I think it's good because you have to change the balance, you know. But the problem is if you talk about it publicly too much, it becomes like favoring the woman, you know, and it doesn't become normal that me with my skill set, I would be entitled to have that position, you know, because I bring the skills, but I'm favored because I'm a woman. I know that, you know, and I can live with it, but I hope that at some point it will become a complete natural and normal, a normality, basically.
Which is still a paradox because women are underpaid in
Oh yeah,
so
totally.
but maybe because I wanted to go far, but
I have a question perhaps something to add on. It's like we're talking about this binary discussion so far, but like isn't it part of the school also to question and to bring out this relevancy of gender diversity? And if that is so, and perhaps we agree with that, is that how do you then approach in having a group that is gender diverse? You know? Like, how do you ask for the person to identify themselves whenever applying, without being affirmative or without being you understand my question?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
How can we do that? You know, like because we're doing so through gender, which is easily to identify somewhat. But how do we try to bring this diversity within a group?
Maybe the discovery after the selection sort of was because we never we excluded some elements in our call, meaning the diplomas sort of, and also the gender also, and we focused much on the ability to be mature and to be open to collaborate, and not to identify certain levels of a certain degree of creativity, etc. So, so in some way, not just gender, but also other things were left out of this process. So, yeah, I think, and then that awareness came after.
You made me actually think of this kind of, this is also a design question, you know, like these forms that you have to sign up when you like in bureaucratic system, you know, well you have to go through this whole process. And I mean, to be honest, I became a feminist when I moved to Switzerland, because I never felt so much a foreigner and so much an underrated woman than in Switzerland. That's why I'm leaving also. But what I want to say is that these forms, you know, for me it was crazy. Like a couple months ago I had to sign this form in this institute, and they were asking me, of course, if I'm a man or a woman. Well, you know, I didn't feel too uncomfortable with that. But then really asked me about, you know, like if I'm married or single and stuff like that. And then I was thinking, and I mean, I'm single, I'm not married, I don't have children, you know. And I was just thinking, it's crazy that I'm 35 and I have to tell them in which position I am. I shouldn't, you know. I felt almost discriminated in a sense, not because I feel sorry for myself, not at all. In contrary, it's more that this is because you're instantly judged, you know. And the problem is the judgment, you know, that you can't be, that you have to clarify where you position yourself in a way. So I wonder how these forms could look in the future, where you are not confronted, or like how much do you earn, you know. For other people it's very uncomfortable to write that down, because I mean as a freelancer, you fluctuate all the time, so you sometimes don't know. It's always speculation, and you have to unveil all this information to this person that I even don't know. That like completely neutrally, like here, this is my life on a paper. Yeah.
I'm also curious because earlier we were talking about how language changed the outcome of design, or is changing, and now we don't call it official language. We call it the language which we choose to communicate through. But at the same time, we do communicate in Dutch, and Flemish. But having said that, language and having a sort of 90% female participation, it will change. However, it changes the change we are making. So
Language through the women?
No,
No.
language. Earlier,
Oh, yeah, it was confusing.
we were talking about the official language used in Matylda project, even though the brochures are also in Italian.
Yeah, but that was for Milano.
Okay.
The manual is in
Yeah.
English.
And that English was sort of including, excluding, so
Mm.
that dual role of, and is it the language of design or not? And so we were discussing about this and how selection by language changes who you have participating, and so it changes the design or the process. And so now by selecting, by having a different reality, I'm just curious how different the change will be when we will make it.
What do you think?
It is different, of course. It's an answer in my question, but I'm just curious how. There are some very practical things where we, in our stereotypical way, still we're stuck in that thinking where we said, okay, still it would be good to have a sort of a Jeroen with strong arms now and then to
Who's a Jeroen?
be able to lift
Jeroen.
things.
I also thought I really thought it's a sexist comment because I thought the your room with strong hands, but he is actually here.
But and then yesterday we were struggling to lift the impossible ping pong table upstairs with Pablo and Jeroen. But of course, having that thought of this impossible thought of having that thing necessarily go upstairs wouldn't have been there. Possibly.
We didn't manage to bring it up.
No.
So maybe if you would have asked the room, maybe they would have had a smartest way of doing it, and they would have managed it. So I think, I think it's interesting, and I think you, like Federica inquires, but why are we talking about this if we were supposed to be over this?
Yeah.
Yes and no, because I think it's also important to try to acknowledge or recognize whenever there is something going well in that sense, like when there is like a good case, like so I see this as a kind of reflection of it's great that it happened like this, and we're trying to understand why. And I think this is important, of course, for society, but for these kind of projects of how to avoid building these walls that create discrimination. So I think this is why I think it is very important, and of course I think it's extremely important to give voice to this kind of discourses, and I think because feminism is not over. I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, it's not over, and I think this has to be an ongoing debate. That sometimes it goes like woven between other kind of projects and
Let's make T-shirts.
and sometimes very explicit. Yeah. But
And what about what's happening in Europe? So how can we cope with the fact that organization or events like these are increasing, and on the other side, the right is governing Europe more or less. So it's amazing, the situation. It's amazing.
Maybe I introduce our next guest, Rosario Talevi, I think, right? And she's lifting her hand now and then to say something.
Yeah.
Hi.
I
No, I just want to bring, like, for me, it's a definition from that books what feminism is, and it's a struggle to dismantle patriarchy society, which we're very embedded in.
Patriarchy.
And I think this is what you said that brings minorities together. It's not just a fight of women against men. It's just it's a common struggle of minorities to dismantle a system that is very imposed, and this far right and everything that you just mentioned.
It's even bigger.
So maybe it's a solution.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's important to relearn those waves of feminism and situate them today where we're at.
Mia.
Yeah. Before moving on to the other issues, I just want to say, talk about things that we discussed. So we've been talking about the gender discrimination, but for me, I don't know, it's kind of tricky just only talking about gender, because nowadays there's so many types of discrimination. Even though it's gender discrimination, but so many different discrimination can be concerns like a racist, race, or about like money or whatever. So like so many men's like comparing their penis sizes. So I think people have to like open-minded, and then because you talk about access, because nowadays we have a more way to access to someone, so we have a more kind of have a capability to understand someone else. So it's more about understanding, and then having a kind of concept or like thought for the minority. I think that's more issues, not just talking about like a certain discrimination types. I think it's something more complex. We are concerning each other, so we have to think about something big pictures, not just talking about men and women. That's my
It's complex.
Maybe on a side, not a completely side note today. So today there are 2 people missing, for sure. There are more missing, but one is Loris Mitri. She was also an applicant for the 7-month period, accepted, and then applied for a visa and didn't get a visa to come here from out of Mexico. And the other one is Gayatri D, who is living in India, in Mumbai, and also hasn't yet been approved to come here. Which we have been here, and we have been having no trouble in being here. And so there's one other thing related that is good to be aware of, that we are privileged to be here and to just play and move and go to Maastricht and go to another city just freely, or to go to Mumbai and to go to Mexico without a problem. How about some breaks? Good? Good?
Yeah.
We'll be back in 15.